Play action. Bennett looks down the middle. McConkey's wide open. Touchdown, Dogs.
Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Colin Bashnigel here, also known as Bash LSN. That is the tag you can find me on TikTok. It's also the tag you can find me on Twitch. And when I do go and record these videos, I record them live, and it's live on Twitch. So you can go over to my Twitch if you want to interact with me as we go with whatever team we are going to be talking about. Right now, it's Notre Dame. Later on tonight, we're going to have Oklahoma. And maybe, just maybe, if we have time tonight, probably not tonight, probably will be tomorrow, we have Colorado on deck, which is going to be interesting and definitely a lot of work. So we'll talk about that entire transfer portal. But talking about the opposite of Colorado, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, in case you are curious, we are all connected together, Loudmouth Sports. If you're seeing Tyler Isley Ellison out there, he and I are buddies working with this, and they are about to do Loudmouth Weekly here in a little bit. So make sure you check all that out. That would be much appreciated. So make sure you like and subscribe to what I have and what Tyler has as well to get a full look at what our perspective is on college football as the season nears. And we are within 70 days by now of Notre Dame playing against the Naval Academy Shipmen out in Dublin, Ireland. Let's talk about key departures and players leaving. Now, the four big-time players that were lost is tight end Michael Mayer. We all know about him. Center Jarrett Patterson is gone on the offensive side of the ball. You also have edge rusher Isaiah Foskey, who is a really big impact edge rusher that has a hole that needs to be filled. And you have Brandon Joseph, who came in from Northwestern. Kind of a disappointment last year. But overall, compared to a lot of the teams that we are talking about, not a whole lot that they are missing from the NFL draft. Now, as far as who is transferring out, we are going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I'm going to start with Lorenzo Styles because Lorenzo Styles, he was a wide receiver for Notre Dame. He's transferring to Ohio State to play cornerback. He's going there with his brother. It's nothing super personal, but he has more of a longevity of a career at the next level, potentially, if he learns how to play corner. Ohio State wanted him as a corner. You also lose Joe Wilkins out to Miami University, the Red Hawks, who might have a good season on deck here. They're going to be a dangerous team to watch out for. Tight ends, you have two that you lost. The bigger one is Barrett Leibentritt. I think I said that right. It sounds very Notre Dame, but guess what? It's now Nebraska. That's where Leibentritt's going. And you also have Kane Burrong going out to Coastal Carolina, which, hey, tight ends, we know something about Isaiah Likely, tight end from Coastal Carolina in the NFL right now. You lost running back Logan Diggs to LSU. Now, this was big to me and a huge shocker to both Tyler and I. I remember one time we were talking about Logan Diggs here leaving, because I thought Logan Diggs was actually going to make a big impact. Does this mean Chris Tyree is going to play some more running back? We'll discuss that in a little bit. You lost two quarterbacks. We know who they are. Tyler Buckner, you lost him to Bama. He followed Tommy Rees out to Alabama. And then you have Drew Pine going out to Arizona State, competing for that starting job with true freshman Jaden Rashada and maybe like two or three other guys. They have a plethora of quarterbacks out there. And finally, on the offensive side, you lost Caleb Johnson to SMU, who is a team that was on fire in the transfer portal. SMU was. Talk about the defensive side of the ball. What you lost Prince Coley to Vanderbilt. He followed Clark Lee, who recruited him out to Vanderbilt to join him in his second year. I believe it's Clark Lee's second year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Edge rusher Osita Ekwonu, the brother of Ike Ekwonu, is going back home to Charlotte. Both of these guys from Charlotte. One of them stayed at home for college in Raleigh, went to NC State, as we know, a first-round draft pick. Well, Ike's little brother is going back to the home city to play for the 49ers. Then you also have edge rusher Jacob Lacey. He's going out to Oklahoma. That was a huge get for the Oklahoma Sooners defense. And then finally, cornerback Jaden Bellamy is going out to Syracuse. overall. Nothing crazy as far as the impact of the defensive transfers as far as Notre Dame is concerned, though I am a little bit concerned about the depth at the edge rusher position, losing an Isaiah Foskey and losing Jacob Lacey as well. We'll talk about that, though, in just a second as we talk about transfers in. Now, here is a big transfer that I want to highlight immediately before I get to the obvious one, of course. Caleb Smith comes in from Virginia Tech, and he's flashed in his career. I'm not sure how good he's going to work out for Notre Dame, but it definitely gives you another option at wide receiver to be a potential guy that's going to be able to crack the wide receiver rotation. And then you also have running back Devin Ford coming in from Penn State. Personally, not that impressed by him. Don't really think Notre Dame needed him, but we'll see how that all plays out. And then, of course, the final offensive transfer that you took, as you only took 6 transfers, Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. We all know about him. The hype train is going crazy for Sam Hartman right now. On the defensive side of the ball, you brought in safety Antonio Carter from Rhode Island. Don't expect an immediate or huge impact out of him. I think he's going to be a backup, maybe the 3rd safety in the system. And then you have edge rusher Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Now, I think out of the 3 defensive players, you do also have Thomas Harper, who might be a plug-and-play nickel back. But the one thing I know is Javonte Jean-Baptiste transferring in from Ohio State, he is probably going to start day one in a position that you needed to fill with the losses that you had on the edge. So overall, did they win or lose the transfer portal? Well, I think it's kind of, a wash here, because though you lost a ton and you lost a good amount of depth, you brought in a fantastic quarterback. You got a considerable upgrade at quarterback. You brought in somebody to help out with the depth of the wide receiver room. And hey, if you're going to lose edge rushers anyway, if you lose Isaiah Foskey to the draft, if you lose a couple of edge rushers in the transfer portal, might as well bring in a guy like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who's tremendously talented. All right, so we are going to talk about this current team and some breakout players here in a little bit. Now, I just talked about Sam Hartman. We are going to talk about this running back room because I brought up Chris Tyree as we were talking about Caleb Smith. Do I think Chris Tyree is going to move back to running back as he was running some slot receiver? The answer to me is no. Caleb Smith is not going to be able to just get stuck on the outside or in the slot and play in the slot. He's going to be one of the outside 2 receivers. He's not great for that. Who is going to be good for that, or great for that if you want to use it, is Jaden Greathouse. He is a guy who's probably going to play in the slot. You also have Matt Salerno, who's coming back for his senior year. He's going to be very interesting to see, to see if he's got a role in his kind of 5th or 6th year in the program. I don't know. And the other reason I'm pretty convinced of that is you got out to the transfer portal, you picked up Devin Ford. But I also really like this freshman, Jeremiah Love. And you have Jadarian Price. You have Audric Estime, who is an in-between the tackles, absolute power runner. He'll be fun to watch. Now, tight end position is where I'm going to be curious about. Is Davis Sherwood going to play a little bit more up back, and maybe Notre Dame's offense with Jared Parker taking the reins look a little bit different? Or will they go with more 12 personnel using Holden Stays and Mitchell Evans? I think Mitchell Evans is definitely the next guy up, but there is definitely a little bit of, a lot of love lost for the tight end position at Notre Dame with Michael Mayer moving on. Those are big shoes to fill. Michael Mayer, probably the best tight end to come through Notre Dame that I can recall in quite a while. I mean, certainly since Tyler Eifert, in my opinion. Now, you do have a younger guy that I'm going to keep an eye on at this tight end position. That's Eli Raritan, who's coming in as a sophomore, 1 year in the system. I think he's the closest to a receiving threat that Michael Mayer was. Now, I'm not putting that on that kid. That would be very unfair to him, but that's a guy I'm watching for. As we talked about that wide receiver room, we can talk about it a little bit more. Where exactly does Caleb Smith fit? I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of stuff about Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey specifically. The problem I see with Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey is one of them going to sacrifice the X position, right? And then I know for a fact that these guys really love true freshman Rico Flores. So is he going to get on the field and compete for a starting job as well? seems like it's a pretty good problem to have. But the issue I have is, a lot of these guys are coming in and they're super talented, but they're not super proven. You also have Tobias Merriweather, a second-year player. All of these guys, outside of maybe Deion Colsey, hasn't really hit the field too much. And even Deion Colsey doesn't have a whole lot under his belt as far as the receiving game goes. Now, what are you doing on the offensive line? I kind of want to move on here. Now, you bring back Joe Alt at tackle, and you have Blake Fisher stepping in there. I think you're pretty solid at tackle there. Blake Fisher might be a little bit of a question, but I think he's going to be a really good player, and I know for a fact Joe Alt is a really good player. The interior is where I have the questions because Zeke Corral is going to be a very good center, very solid for you. I question whether or not Andrew Kristofic is a liability at guard. And we also don't know what second-year player Billy Schroth is going to bring to the table. And it's certainly concerning that you see Zeke Corral, Correll, I should say, who's coming in as an experienced player, and he's been in the system a while. He's been backing up Jarrett Patterson. How much of a drop-off is there going to be? The interior of the offensive line concerns me a little bit, and if that interior is not strong, Audric Estime is not going to live up to the hype that he's going to get because of how much of an in-between-the-tackles runner that he is. So that's where you could see Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love absolutely make a living for this team. Overall, I think this offense is pretty solid and in better shape than they were last year. Now, defensively, you have a lot of experience here. You have that Viper coming back with Jordan Botello. And then you also, like I said, have Javonte Jean-Baptiste on the other edge, Howard Cross, Riley Mills in the middle. This is going to be a fun front four. I'm not going to lie. But what I'm most excited about is the linebacker group. Maris Lufau is back. J.D. Bertrand is back. Jack Kaiser is back. They return all three of those guys starting at linebacker. Massive. That is the strength of this entire team is their starting three linebackers. In the secondary, I also like what you have. Xavier Watts and DJ Brown are going to be the safeties. They're proven commodities. Cam Hart is one corner. Is Benjamin Morrison going to be that other one? Is Thomas Harper going to have to play outside here? Will a guy like Chance Tucker take the reins there? Jaden Mickey take the reins? That battle is still there, but I think the most talented corner out of all of them to play that number 2 position is Benjamin Morrison. I think Morrison is a guy who could potentially break out there. So overall, when you talk about this Notre Dame roster, I'm looking at breakout players, and I mentioned all of these players. I have one running back who could pop, and that's Jeremiah Love. I think Jeremiah Love, if the in-between-the-tackles game is not working for Audric Estime, he's far more dynamic, even as a true freshman, than Audric Estime brings you at Notre Dame. I have 3 receivers, and I guarantee you one of these 3 will break out. I'd look at the 2 true freshmen, Jaden Greathouse, and then also Rico Flores. Coming in, I think one of them will make an impact. If Chris Tyree is forced to play more of a hybrid role, I expect for Greathouse to be more of a true slot, while Tyree does play a little bit of that, Deebo Samuel type mold, or not even Deebo Samuel, but what Curtis Samuel and Paris Campbell were practicing in college. You also have wide receiver Deion Colsey. I'm hearing that he's absolutely had a fantastic offseason, and he's ready to really be the best receiver on this team, and that's why I list him. Despite the fact that he's a proven commodity at this wide receiver position, Deion Colsey is a guy I could see taking that extra step forward with a great quarterback in Sam Hartman. You also have Benjamin Morrison. I previously mentioned I think he's the most talented corner. I think as cornerback 2, he's going to be pretty solid, and he's going to be a good starter for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, as we break down this schedule, let's look at it here, and I'm going to pull it up, and you're going to see that this is, not the easiest setup of schedule. Now, you can see that 4-game stretch right there: Ohio State, at Duke, at Louisville, USC. None of those 4 games are easy, right? That's where the NC State game, that road trip, can be tricky because you're going to be looking forward to the meat of that schedule, and you can include Pitt and Clemson off of the first bye into that meat of the schedule. That might be a sleepwalk game. But overall, with those 6 games in 7 weeks, This is a very, very tough schedule for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Dublin, Ireland, we're going to see them. I think that we're going to see a lot of new faces and a little bit newer of a style of Notre Dame offense with Sam Hartman, and it's going to excite a lot of people. I think they beat Navy pretty handily in Dublin, and also Navy's not very good, but this is what everybody's going to be watching on that week 0 Saturday is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish playing against Navy because they are curious. This is the big time game on that day. There's a bunch of other games that I'm interested in, and freaking Pac-12 Network gets USC, and I'm annoyed by that a little bit, but Notre Dame is probably going to be the headlines in the national media after week 0. Now, it's just week 0 headlines, so you know they're very vague, but 1 year Illinois stole the show, or 2 years ago, Illinois stole the show on week 0, and then last year it was Northwestern, despite the fact that that was Northwestern's only win. Tennessee State should have no problem against the Fighting Eddie Georges. Then you have at NC State. Just talked about how that's a dangerous game. I do think that they're going to win in Raleigh, but this is going to be a really, really tough one if you fall asleep at the wheel. This defense for NC State's still going to be pretty solid, but I think this offense is going to work through some kinks early, and I think this Notre Dame offense actually could potentially be clicking a little bit more early. This is not going to be a super high-scoring game. I'm not calling it that, but I definitely think that Notre Dame is going to be more ready and up for this game than NC State will be. Central Michigan going to be a win. Don't sleepwalk through this. I think Central Michigan is going to improve a little bit. I think they're going to be the best directional Michigan school in the MAC, but with that being said, you're still going to beat Central Michigan. Then you play Ohio State at home, okay? Now, don't call me a homer because I'm picking Notre Dame to lose. I picked my own Ohio State Buckeyes to lose to the Michigan Wolverines in the Michigan preview. Check it out if you haven't already. So this is not a homer pick. I just don't think that Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to have the type of explosive balance that it is going to take to beat this year's version of Ohio State with that defense. Because of and also, like, again, that second cornerback position is a big worry of mine as well. You talk about a second corner, Ohio State has receivers that can play. And if they can't play, you have guys like Jaden Ballard, like if Julian Fleming, for example, can't play, right? If they can't find that true number 3, Jaden Ballard will take a spot. Carnell Tate can play. I promise you that if Carnell Tate gets an opportunity to play as a true freshman, he will shine. Brandon Ennis, the same. The problem with Brandon Ennis, of course, is he hasn't been on campus. I think Ohio State's just going to be the better team. I think their entire lead up to that game is going to be all geared towards Notre Dame. And Notre Dame at least has to focus on that NC State game, and they would have already played an extra game by here because of the week 0 game and not getting a bye. This is going to be a tough one. I think that it's going to be a close game. I don't think Ohio State's going to even control them the way they did last year, and it was still pretty close in the shoe. I had no doubt Ohio State was going to win that game as it was playing out last year. I think there might be some doubt this year. I think Notre Dame's a pretty good offense, and Sam Hartman's a dangerous quarterback. At Duke's also going to be a loss. Don't ridicule me too much. I think the Ohio State game beats you against Duke, right? I think you sleepwalk through probably half of the game. You wake up, you make it close, but it's too little too late. This Duke team is going to be fun offensively, led by Riley Leonard. Mike Elko's going to be able to improve on what that defense has at Duke. They're not going to be an easy out. I think that if you beat Ohio State, you have a hangover. If you lose to Ohio State, they beat you twice. Basically, I am saying Ohio State is the main reason why you lose this game. Regardless on whether or not you win that game in South Bend, it does not matter. I think Duke will be able to sneak up on you in this situation, especially if they lose that week 1 game to Clemson. Then you have at Louisville, another tough game, but I'm going to give you the win. I think that what Jeff Brom is going to try to do is excellent at Louisville. I am curious to see if he has the right people for his system at Louisville. But the one thing I know for sure is that I absolutely love how this sets up for Notre Dame, right? kind of bouncing off the walls, losing to Ohio State in a tough one, letting Duke beat you. They're going to be up for that Louisville game. They're not going to sell out because look at how they bounced back last year. I mean, they had every reason to quit after the Marshall game, and they didn't. They bounced back and they saved their season. They rescued it. They look like a good team. I think they're going to rescue it again. And I think they beat their rival USC at home, getting that staple win for the 2023 season. Oh, but you picked Oregon to beat USC. Guys, here's what you need to realize about USC. And again, this might be the only 2 losses I have, and this does not affect conference play for USC. My biggest issue with USC is, A, I don't trust that defense. I don't trust their depth on defense and their depth on the offensive line as well. And guys, what you got to realize is they play all these games stacked up in a row. They have a bye on rivalry weekend. So like, hey, if they get to the Pac-12 championship, they're going to be well rested for that game. So that's cool. They don't play rivalry weekend. That was a little bit redundant there. They play UCLA on the 18th, and then they're off on the 25th. Notre Dame plays Stanford on the road on the 25th, as you see here. So USC doesn't have that. So is that their only bye? No, they have an earlier bye. I think that bye was either September 9th or September 16th. It was like after 3 or 4 games. It's very early. This is in the midst of the Pac-12 season, and they got to go across the country to Notre Dame. I'm sorry, USC fans. I'm not a hater. I promise you, I have so much respect for Caleb Williams to the point where I can't think of anybody who would challenge for the Heisman Trophy right now as we speak, not even Sam Hartman. But you got to admit that this is really tough. You could also say, though, that Notre Dame's going into this game having, played 7 games in a row before this point. They get a bye the next week. They probably are going to know that. They're going to put everything in it after back-to-back road trips. They are going to be pumped up knowing that they can save their season and get a huge win at home. I'm taking Notre Dame. Don't call me a hater. Off the bye, I think they beat the Pittsburgh Panthers. I think Pitt's going to be a pretty decent team. Phil Dracovic comes in, and this offense has actually very much impressed me the last couple of years. And last year, they looked pretty good in the regular season offensively, and their defense steadily improved a little bit last year. And I think they're going to improve a little bit more this year. But I do expect for that offense to take a tiny step back. And I think Notre Dame's just going to be a better team, and they get them at home. At Clemson here, I'm going to go with a loss here. I really like this Clemson team the more I look at them. If their offense has what I think they are going to have with Antonio Williams breaking out, Cade Klubnik developing under Garrett Riley, I'm kind of jumping back on the Clemson train, and I don't love that because people that know me, I kind of don't like how Dabo Swinney does things. But guess what? Dabo fixed some of the things that I had problems with by getting rid of Brandon Streeter, his old buddy, and bringing in an outsider like Garrett Riley. And he entered the transfer, or he grabbed somebody from the transfer portal, Hunter Johnson, brought him back to Clemson. A good old boy of Clemson. Off the bye, beat Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is going to be a decent team still. I think too many people are expecting them to drop off a cliff. But you got to admit that Dave Clawson was having something amazing built at Wake Forest prior to Sam Hartman becoming the starter. And then Stanford is a hot mess. I think you win that game, but it might be a tougher game November 25th with Troy Taylor kind of getting this thing figured out. But at the end of the day, Troy Taylor does not have the players yet that he's going to need for that system. That's a long-term rebuild, if you ask me, because transfer portal is not easy there. So there you have it, 9-3 for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And look, this is also kind of the floor to me. I think this is mostly schedule dynamics. The over-under win total is 8.5. I am pretty positive that Notre Dame at worst is going to be 9-3. I think this offense is going to take a little bit of a jump forward. I like this wide receiver room. I don't love them because like I said at the beginning, and this is going to be a big for Notre Dame season, and the difference between 11-1 with that tough of a schedule versus 9-3. The difference is, are all of these guys who are not proven, are they going to be able to step up and make big plays? And that's what it's going to come down to for me with this Notre Dame team. So with that being said, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. And again, check out my TikTok and follow on Twitch. See when I go live so that way you can comment with me live, okay? And that being said, we'll be back later with the Oklahoma video. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.